Imagine being on top of the world, your love story sung in every honky-tonk, celebrated in every magazine, adored by millions, and then, in an instant, it's over. The crowds, the accolades, the feeling of invincibility, all of it vanishes. The lights go dim, and you're left to navigate the silence that follows. For Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert, their relationship wasn't just a love story. It was the love story of country music. Fans saw them as Nashville's golden couple, the embodiment of country perfection. But what happens when perfection falls apart? When everything the world believed in crumbles in front of your eyes? In 2015, their divorce sent shockwaves through the country music scene. It was a breakup that no one expected, and the wounds ran deep. Not just for Blake and Miranda, but for the millions of fans who had pinned their hopes and dreams on this power couple. They were the dream. They were supposed to be forever. But the thing about love stories, especially the ones lived out on a stage, is that they don't always go the way we expect. After the split, both Blake and Miranda moved on in their own ways. Blake with Gwen Stefani, Miranda with Brendan McLaughlin. New relationships, new beginnings. Yet, even as time passed, something lingered in the air. What if it wasn't really over? What if the love they shared never really left them? What if, just beneath the surface, there were still unresolved feelings, hidden messages, and unfinished business? And what if this was all just the beginning of something no one ever saw coming? Years have passed. Blake and Miranda, once seen as the perfect duo, have built lives apart from each other. Blake's high-profile marriage to pop star Gwen Stefani became a media sensation. From the set of The Voice to their crossover hits, they've become a household name. Meanwhile, Miranda's life took a quieter turn, marrying former NYPD officer Brendan McLaughlin in a ceremony that seemed to be the beginning of her own new chapter. To the world, everything seemed fine. The stage lights have shifted, and the rumors seem to fade. Yet, with every passing year, something about the story of Blake and Miranda felt unfinished. Like a favorite song that keeps playing in the background, no matter how far you move, the melody follows. In interviews, Blake and Miranda were polite about each other. The past, they claimed, was behind them. But sometimes the silence between them spoke louder than any words. Their fans, devoted, passionate, and never truly willing to let go, watched every move they made. The smallest gesture, the slightest mention, and suddenly the whispers began again. Blake, wearing that old Stetson hat, remember? The one Miranda had given him years ago, before it all fell apart. Was it just a hat? Or was it a subtle message from a time when their lives intertwined more deeply than anyone realized? Miranda, too. She'd perform songs that, to her fans, didn't feel like ordinary tunes. Subtle nods, they said. Hidden meanings buried in the lyrics. Could it be? Was she singing about him again, after all this time? The internet exploded with theories. Was there more to their story than anyone could see? And then, the ultimate question. Had they really moved on? Or were they both simply holding on to something they couldn't quite let go of? And then, just when it seemed like the noise had quieted, something unexpected happened. In 2025, the unthinkable occurred. Rumors that had once been dismissed as wishful thinking suddenly gained traction, and the whispers turned into a storm. Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert, both at the same recording studio in Nashville just hours apart. Was it a coincidence? Or something more? At first, it could have been dismissed as nothing. Two country stars working in the same town. But as the details began to leak, the speculation grew louder. Insiders started talking, dropping hints that their teams had been in discussions about something. Secret? A duet? A collaboration? An album? The questions came flooding in, each one bigger than the last. Fans, who had long speculated that there might be more to the story, were now hungrier than ever for confirmation. And they didn't have to wait long. Blake and Miranda, two names that had dominated the country music scene, suddenly had all eyes on them again. Every social media post, every photo, every little gesture was now under scrutiny. Blake, photographed in that same old hat, again. Miranda, singing songs with lyrics that seemed too close to the past. The coincidences were starting to pile up. Was this just a series of random events, or was it all part of something much bigger? And then it happened. The most telling clue of all. Miranda, in an interview, was asked if she would ever work with Blake again. Her answer? Never say never. Life has a funny way of surprising you. Boom. The internet exploded. Fans who had always hoped for a reunion, whether professional or personal, now had their hope reignited. A single phrase, a moment captured in time, and with it the floodgates opened. Chuck, a Lambert Shelton, a country reunion, trended for days. TikTok exploded with montages of old duets, paired with captions like, "Some loves never die." But in the midst of the frenzy, one question remained. What was really going on? Of course, no story is ever that simple. For every move that Blake and Miranda made, there was a ripple effect, a reaction that couldn't be ignored. Their rekindled connection, whether professional or personal, wasn't just affecting them. It was shaking the very foundation of their current relationships. On the other side of the drama stood Gwen Stefani, Blake's wife, the woman who had entered his life after Miranda. To the public, Gwen and Blake were inseparable, a power couple in their own right. But as the rumors swirled, so did the unspoken tension. Gwen's silence, for one, spoke volumes. She was always in the spotlight, always poised, but this time she was quieter than ever. Every subtle glance at the camera, every word she didn't say, was being analyzed. Fans, once loyal to Blake and Gwen's love story, began questioning her feelings. Was she worried? Was she uncomfortable with the rumors of Blake and Miranda's potential reunion? In one Instagram story, Gwen posted a picture of her wedding ring with the caption, "Forever means forever." A simple statement? Or a defense against the rising speculation that she might be losing her grip on her marriage? The world, it seemed, was waiting for her to react more directly. And Blake? What about him? Why wasn't he saying anything? For years, he had been known for deflecting rumors with humor, often making light of the gossip. But this time, silence. Was it out of respect for Gwen? Or was there something deeper? Something he couldn't bring himself to voice? Meanwhile, Miranda's own life was coming under the microscope. Her marriage to Brendan McLaughlin, which had seemed like the perfect fresh start, was suddenly scrutinized. Where was Brendan? Why had he been absent from so many recent public appearances? The absence didn't go unnoticed by the fans who had already seen the cracks before. Was it just coincidence, or was there more at play? Miranda, ever the enigma, gave little away. But in interviews, she had started making curious remarks that only fueled the fire. When asked about her past with Blake, she smiled a little too knowingly and said, "You know, life has a funny way of surprising you." Was this a sign that she was still holding on to something? Or was she simply feeding into the narrative without fully acknowledging it? As the rumors continued to build, the small clues and cryptic remarks began to take on a life of their own. Fans, forever the detectives, pieced together the puzzle with fervor. The what-ifs started to feel less like speculation and more like a slow-burning truth. Each detail, a song lyric, an Instagram post, a whispered conversation, added fuel to the fire, and soon it was impossible to ignore. The idea of a reunion wasn't just a distant fantasy anymore. It was becoming something real. But the greatest spark came from Miranda herself. After the interview where she had teased, "Never say never," everything changed. The internet, as it often does, took that one comment and ran with it. The frenzy that followed was unlike anything anyone had seen before. Fans rushed to analyze old footage, revisiting every duet, every shared glance. TikTok exploded with throwback videos, captions screaming about a potential reunion, a chance to relive the love story they had all believed in so deeply. But it wasn't just the fans that were starting to believe. Industry insiders couldn't help but notice the shift. Speculation was mounting in Nashville. The question no longer seemed to be if something would happen between Blake and Miranda, but when it would happen. If they were truly working on something together, it would be huge, a commercial juggernaut, a perfect storm in the making. The charts, the arenas, the streaming platforms. It was all there, waiting. Even country music critics, who were usually skeptical of such rumors, started whispering that a collaboration between Blake and Miranda would be historic. The nostalgia alone could propel it to unprecedented heights, but still, the emotional side of the story remained undeniable. To fans, the possibility of a reunion wasn't just about numbers or charts. It was about closure, about getting the ending they had always wanted but never received. What if Blake and Miranda weren't just collaborating on a song? What if this was their way of writing the final chapter to a story that never had a proper ending? With every new theory, every subtle hint, and every glance, the speculation began to spiral. What was once just a quiet whisper had evolved into a full-fledged media storm. It wasn't just the country music world watching anymore, it was everyone. And as with every good rumor, it wasn't just about the truth, it was about the drama. Fans took center stage, poring over every moment, every social media post, every interview for clues. Blake and Miranda's past was a gold mine. Every mention, every gesture, every photo became a piece of the puzzle. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get more intense, a new bombshell dropped. Industry insiders, people who had been close to both artists, began to speak out. They claimed that Blake and Miranda had quietly been meeting, discussing something. Could it be a collaboration? A duet? An album? Something bigger? But the whispers didn't stop at speculation about music. The personal element, the human drama, was just as irresistible. Blake's marriage to Gwen Stefani was now under scrutiny. Would their relationship survive the constant media attention on his past with Miranda? Gwen, always a cool customer, was now the subject of fan theories. Was she frustrated with the rumors? Was she aware of how much emotional territory Miranda still occupied in Blake's heart? Was she threatened? Or had she accepted that her marriage to Blake came with a baggage that no amount of fame could erase? For Blake, this entire situation was becoming more complicated than anyone could have anticipated. While his silence was often interpreted as respect for Gwen, those close to him knew that there was more to it. Blake had moved on with Gwen, yes, but Miranda had always held a significant place in his life and in his heart. No matter how much time had passed, no matter how many songs he'd sung with Gwen, the past was something that wasn't easily erased. Miranda, too, was facing her own set of questions. Her marriage to Brendan, which seemed like a new chapter of her life, was now being questioned. Fans noticed his absence from recent public appearances. Why wasn't he around? Was everything truly fine? And in the midst of these speculations, Miranda remained cryptic, her comments about the past and present only fueling the fire. Was she intentionally stoking the flames? Or was she simply saying what came naturally? It's often said that the truth is like a slow burn. It's never immediate, and it's never easy to grasp. And in the case of Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert, the truth was no exception. Every new development, every cryptic comment, every new piece of evidence pushed the narrative forward, but it still left the world on the edge of its seat, waiting for the real revelation. Miranda's "never say never" had created a spark that quickly ignited the media frenzy. But it wasn't just about the words. It was about the silence that followed. Neither Blake nor Miranda had come forward to set the record straight, and their lack of denial became its own kind of statement. Silence is powerful. Silence leaves room for interpretation. And fans, always eager to fill in the gaps, began to weave their own narrative. What if this wasn't just about a professional collaboration? What if it was a sign of something more profound? Something that spoke to the heart of the country music legacy they had built together. After all, Blake and Miranda's relationship was always more than just a love story. It was the story. Their songs, their public moments, their chemistry, everything they did together told a story of passion, heartbreak, and hope. Fans began to believe that if Blake and Miranda were truly in the same room again, if they were collaborating on something new, it wouldn't just be a return to the spotlight. It would be a chance for them to rewrite their story, to heal, to address the past, and maybe even find closure, not just for themselves, but for all of the fans who had lived vicariously through their love and loss. Some insiders, speaking anonymously, claimed that the moment Blake and Miranda were in the same space together, something changed. It wasn't just about the music. It was about the energy. They had a history, and it wasn't one that could simply be swept under the rug. Their chemistry, raw, undeniable, and ever-present, couldn't be faked. A producer who had worked with both of them hinted that if a reunion were to happen, it would carry a level of authenticity that the industry was desperately craving. The chemistry wasn't just real, it was electric. As the rumors reached a fever pitch, the country music world seemed to hold its breath. The whispers that had once been small, almost imperceptible, were now impossible to ignore. The past, long buried under the weight of time, had come roaring back to life, and with it the question everyone was asking: what happens now? It wasn't just the fans who were eagerly awaiting an answer. The industry was on edge too. Executives, producers, and agents were all speculating about the financial windfall a Blake Miranda collaboration could generate. But there was something more at stake here than just ticket sales or album charts. The music industry, especially country music, thrives on storytelling, and Blake and Miranda's story was far from finished. It had been a raw, public journey of love, heartache, and personal transformation. And for those who had followed it, closely, emotionally, it wasn't just about a reunion for the sake of nostalgia. It was about closure. It was about finally understanding what had happened, why things fell apart, and whether the love that once defined an era could be resurrected. For Blake, the situation was more complicated than anyone could understand. He had built a life with Gwen Stefani, and his love for her was undeniable. But, as those closest to him knew, Miranda wasn't just a chapter in his past. She was a part of him. No matter how much time had passed, no matter how many songs he'd sung with Gwen, there was an undeniable connection between Blake and Miranda that couldn't be ignored. And then there was Miranda. She had moved on in her own way, carving out a life with Brendan McLaughlin. But even as she stepped into a new chapter, it was clear that she was forever tied to Blake, not just through their shared history, but through the music they created together. Every song, every lyric, was a reflection of their love, their pain, and their journey. In interviews, she'd made statements about how life has a funny way of surprising you. It seemed as though she, too, had left the door slightly ajar, leaving fans to wonder, could there still be a chance for them? Or were these words just another way of keeping the mystery alive? But here's the thing about love stories. They don't always have tidy endings. Sometimes they circle back, and sometimes they're meant to evolve. What if, for Blake and Miranda, this wasn't just about a reunion, it was about redemption, about acknowledging the past, accepting the pain, and moving forward in a new way? And so, as the industry waited with bated breath, the one question that remained was, what will Blake and Miranda do next? Here's what we know for sure. In the world of country music, Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert aren't just stars. They are symbols of a time, a feeling, and a love that touched millions. And their story, whether it ends with a song, a duet, or a rekindled romance, will continue to captivate the world. Because their journey speaks to something universal. To love lost, to regrets, to the possibility of second chances. But what about you? What's your story? What's your second chance? Do you believe in unfinished business? Are you ready to rewrite your own narrative? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this story, like, share, and subscribe for more. Who knows, maybe your second chance is just one step away.